Imagine you're a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's 68 million years ago, and you're basically the apex predator of late Cretaceous North America. You've got teeth the size of bananas, a bite force that could crush a car, and a reputation that makes every other animal in your neighborhood think twice before leaving their den. You're the king, the boss, the final boss. But there's one creature, one that even you won't touch. Not because it's faster, not because it's bigger, not even because it can fight back in the traditional sense. No, this thing is just unkillable. A living tank. A 5-ton armored fortress with a tail that swings like a medieval mace, and armor so thick it could stop a bullet. And the weirdest part? We've never found a single fossil with T-Rex bite marks on it. So, what was this dinosaur that made the most terrifying predator in history say, "Yeah, I'm gonna pass"? Buckle up, because we're talking about the Ankylosaurus, the only dinosaur that T-Rex was legitimately scared of. Let's rewind to the early 1900s. Montana, the Hell Creek Formation. A paleontologist's dream. Fossils everywhere. T-Rex bones, Triceratops skulls, the works, and then someone finds this. A jumble of bones, teeth, and what can only be described as bony roof tiles. At first, paleontologists are confused. This thing doesn't look like any dinosaur they've seen before. It's got a body like a tank, a skull like a sledgehammer, and these weird, fused plates of bone covering its entire back. They call it Ankylosaurus, which literally means fused lizard. Try spelling that after a few drinks. And here's where it gets wild. This thing was so different from every other dinosaur that scientists had to create an entirely new group just for it. The Ankylosauria, a whole family of armored herbivores that looked like they were designed by a medieval blacksmith with a dinosaur obsession. But Ankylosaurus wasn't just any ankylosaur. Oh no, it was the biggest ankylosaur ever found. And by big, I mean freaking massive. Okay, let's talk numbers. Adult Ankylosaurus measured anywhere from 18 to 33 feet long. That's about as long as a school bus. But here's the kicker. Despite not being that tall, only about 5 feet 7 inches at the hips, they weighed between 5 and 8 tons. For context, that's heavier than a Triceratops. Heavier than a Spinosaurus. Hell, it's almost as heavy as a modern African elephant. So, why was it so heavy? Simple. Armor. Ankylosaurus was covered, head to tail, in osteoderms. These are basically bony plates that were embedded in its skin like biological Kevlar. We're talking knobs, spikes, and slabs of bone that varied in size depending on where they were on the body. The bigger plates? Those were concentrated near vulnerable areas like the neck, where a predator might try to clamp down. But here's the genius part. Ankylosaurus armor wasn't solid. It was hollow underneath. At first, that sounds worse, right? Like, wouldn't solid armor be better? Nope. The hollow construction created a dome-like shape, which actually made the armor more resistant to crushing bites, like the kind a T-Rex would deliver. It was basically ancient composite armor. Engineers didn't figure this out until, like, World War II. Ankylosaurus figured it out 68 million years ago. Oh, and beneath all that armor, collagen fibers. Thick ones. Way thicker than anything you'd find in a modern crocodile or armadillo. These fibers helped with shock absorption, force distribution, and even growth and repair. It's like Ankylosaurus had its own internal suspension system. Studies have shown that this armor was strong enough to withstand small arms gunfire. Not joking. You could shoot an Ankylosaurus with a pistol, and it would probably just look at you like, really? Now, if the armor wasn't intimidating enough, let me introduce you to the pièce de résistance, the tail club. This thing was a weapon of mass destruction. Made of two large osteoderms, two smaller ones, and a row of tiny ones along the midline, the tail club could reach 22.5 inches in width and weighed around 50 pounds. That's about the weight of a heavy sledgehammer. But unlike a sledgehammer, Ankylosaurus could swing this thing at insane speeds. Thanks to massive tail muscles and ossified tendons, basically bone-infused tendons, the tail club could generate over 20,000 newtons of force. That's enough to shatter bone, easily. In fact, one study found that the tail had an impulse of 4,800 newtons per second. For comparison, a professional baseball player swings a bat at about 13 newtons per second. That means Ankylosaurus was swinging its tail club 370 times harder than a major league slugger. You get hit by that? You're done. Broken ribs, shattered leg bones. Game over. And the wild part? We've never found a theropod with injuries that match a tail club strike. Not one. Which has led some scientists to wonder, was the tail club even designed for predators? Or was it for fighting other ankylosaurs? Here's where it gets interesting. We do have evidence of ankylosaurs using their tail clubs, but not against T-Rex, against each other. A smaller ankylosaur called Zool, yes, like the Ghostbusters demon, paleontologists have a sense of humor, has been found with injuries consistent with tail club strikes. The theory? These clubs were used in social dominance fights, basically Ankylosaur Fight Club. But does that mean they didn't use them against predators? Not necessarily. Look at deer. Antlers are primarily used for dominance fights with other deer, but if a predator shows up, they'll absolutely use those antlers to defend themselves. Or consider the Stegosaurus, a close relative of Ankylosaurus. We've found evidence of a Stegosaurus impaling an Allosaurus with its tail spikes. And let's just say it wasn't a good day for the Allosaurus. So, yeah, it's entirely possible, likely even, that Ankylosaurus would use its tail club to fend off a T-Rex if needed. And given that reconstructions show it had a wide striking range behind it, that's exactly where a T-Rex would appear during an ambush. Okay, so we've established that Ankylosaurus was a walking fortress. But what was its day-to-day life like? First off, it was a herbivore. A big one. It had a wide, low-slung body and a broad muzzle, perfect for munching on ferns and low-growing shrubs. These weren't exactly calorie-dense foods, so an adult Ankylosaurus had to eat about 130 pounds of plants every day. That's roughly the same as a modern elephant. To process all that vegetation, Ankylosaurus had a unique digestive system. It used hindgut fermentation. Basically, symbiotic bacteria in its gut broke down the plant matter. This required a large fermentation chamber, which is why Ankylosaurus had such a wide belly. It wasn't fat, it was just full of fermenting plants. Pretty metal, and it had teeth. Small, cusp-like teeth with protrusions that helped cut vegetation into small pieces. Plus, a narrow beak for stripping leaves off branches. Efficient. But here's the catch. Ankylosaurus was slow. Like walking human, slow. Its bulky body and short legs meant it wasn't winning any races. But honestly, it didn't need to. When you're covered in bone armor and wielding a 50-pound sledgehammer for a tail, speed is overrated. Oh, and it had an exceptional sense of smell. Its nasal passages and olfactory bulbs suggest it could detect rotten food, ripe fruit, or a lurking T-Rex from a distance. Its eyesight, though? Not great. It had stereoscopic vision, but it wasn't exactly eagle-eyed. So, did Ankylosaurus live in herds? Short answer, probably not. Juveniles? Yeah, they likely hung out in groups for protection. Young ankylosaurs didn't have fully developed armor or tail clubs, so they were vulnerable. Sticking together decreased the odds of any one individual getting picked off by a predator. But once they hit adulthood, they went solo. With armor and a tail club like that, who needs a herd? This also means Ankylosaurus wasn't an ecosystem engineer. Unlike hadrosaurs or modern elephants, which reshape landscapes as they pass through, Ankylosaurus just existed. It ate plants, wandered around, and occasionally swung its tail at anything that got too close. Ankylosaurus lived in what is now Montana, Alberta, and parts of Canada during the late Cretaceous, about 68 to 66 million years ago. The most famous site where Ankylosaurus fossils have been found, the Hell Creek Formation. And let me tell you, Hell Creek was packed. We're talking T-Rex, Triceratops, Edmontosaurus, Dakotaraptor, pterosaurs, crocodiles, turtles, mammals, you name it. It was like the Serengeti, but with dinosaurs. The environment was a forested floodplain with a subtropical climate. Rivers, ferns, conifers, monsoons, tropical storms, and occasional wildfires. It was chaotic, and in that chaos, Ankylosaurus thrived. But here's the thing. Ankylosaurus fossils only make up about 1% of all fossils found in Hell Creek. That's not a lot, which suggests they had low population numbers, possibly because they didn't reproduce as frequently as other dinosaurs. So, did T-Rex ever actually attack an Ankylosaurus? We don't know. We've never found bite marks. But given the armor, the tail club, and the sheer tankiness of this animal, it's entirely possible that T-Rex just didn't bother. Why risk a shattered jaw or broken leg when there's a nice, squishy Edmontosaurus right over there? In the end, the only thing that could kill Ankylosaurus was the asteroid. 66 million years ago, a 6-mile-wide rock slammed into Earth, causing wildfires, tsunamis, and a nuclear winter that wiped out the dinosaurs. And even then, I like to imagine the last Ankylosaurus looking up at the sky, tail club ready, thinking, "Bring it." Thanks for watching. If you want to see what happened after the dinosaurs, spoiler, giant reptiles came back, check out our video on the rise of the crocodilians. And as always, stay curious. Until next time, on Extinct Zoo.